Welcome to TFL's new series, Hot or Not. And as always, I've got
Paul,
who is our expert race car driver, and I'm Roman, and of course, I'm an automotive journalist. But today we've got a really special show because we've got two cars that actually compete. We're known for doing mashups, but these guys, head-to-head, man.
Yeah, head-to-head, and what two better cars to take head-to-head than these two?
Now, we've done a bunch of these episodes, so I thought we'd mix it up a little bit today. And we had fun at the track because Paul got behind the wheel of both cars, lapped them, and took them around the track, and I did not tell him how fast he went.
He did not.
But I told you, so you will know how fast he went, so he's going to be guessing. So we're going to see just how good his seat of the pants timer.
Right.
Yeah. So let's just cut to the chase and let's go right to the track and find out which one is faster from 0 to 60.
Okay, 0 to 60 in the Scion FRS, and let's see how she does. Remember, we're at a mile above sea level, 9.15 seconds to 60 in the FRS.
All right, Paul, so you took the FRS first. How did it launch?
A little bit of wheel spin,
yeah,
which was a bit surprising, and then instantly kind of fell out of its power band and then just kind of meandered through its mid-range and pulled a little at the top. And it also required a shift from second to third, which is unusual for a car. A lot of cars get it done in second gear.
And you know, it's up here at a mile above sea level. It's normally aspirated, and it's not torquey.
No, and a little bit heavier too, relatively speaking. So yeah, it wasn't a particularly quick car to 60, that's for sure.
All right, well, let's find out how you did in the Miata. Or is it MX-5? Or is it Miata?
MX-5.
I know.
Yeah,
They keep. I know. You know, that's just so confusing. That here in America, Scion FRS, Subaru BRZ, rest of the world, Toyota 86.
Yep. That
was a Miata here in America forever, but an MX-5 in the rest of the world. But let's see how fast it went from 0 to 60.
Okay, 0 to 60 run on the MX-5. Let's see how she does. All right, 7.76 seconds. That's pretty good acceleration for such a little engine, low power engine, but it's in a very light car.
So how did that feel? Was it different from the FRS?
Definitely. I think the biggest thing is it feels like it's got more power, though we know it doesn't, and so that comes down to the weight difference, 400 pounds and
heavier.
Yeah, 400 pounds heavier, of course, and so you could feel that where it was much more revvy, and it had it feeling like it had more torque relatively, which it does when you look at torque to weight, and so it got up into the horsepower quicker, and therefore was quite a bit faster, 0 to 60.
Now I had a really fun week behind the wheel of both of these cars, and well, if I'm being honest, the immediate sensation I get is that I'm a little height challenged for both of these cars, which is not an issue you have.
No. Wow, you heard that, right?
Little niggles that I have to talk about, first and foremost, are these cup holders, which are back here. And yeah, they're good for holding cups, but they're not good for drinking because you can't get to them. You can take the cup holder off like this, and you can mount it over here in the passenger footwell, but then if you have a passenger, they have to be kneeless, which can be rather troubling. The other thing I like about this car is the shifter. It's got a very short throw, it's very precise, and unlike the FRS, look at that, I've actually got something called torque, and it will spin up all the way to the 7,000 red line, which is wonderful as well. But you know what, I don't think people who are driving a Miata are going to be using this as their daily driver. This is probably a second, third, or maybe even a fourth car to some people, and in that case, you can probably hold off to drink until you get to whatever destination you're going to. So of course there are two big differences between this car and the Miata, and that is the roof, of course, but you know that. The other difference is, hey, I've got back seats back here. So if you are looking for a car that can potentially be used as a family truckster, And I mean that. You might be scratching her heads thinking, a family truckster? Yeah, I have a friend who actually bought this and used it because he could get a child seat back there. But you do have the ability to sit, well, 4 people in a pinch. What is good is that there's room in here for me. The Miata, it just is very tight. I feel like with the top down especially, I'm pretty miserable. Here, at least I have a little bit of headroom. I have a little bit of shoulder room. I feel like I'm in a car that I could live with on an everyday basis. And that's, of course, only if you're height challenged like me. Simply put, if I'm 6'2", I just don't fit in either car. I mean, I like to, well, like the youngsters like to lay back, right? I like to kind of sit up. I like to have my arms, not like this, but just a little bit.
Which is right, which is the way to do it. Yeah.
I can't do it in either car. I just can't do it because my head hits the roof in that car, so I'm driving like this. How about you?
No, I'm perfectly comfortable in both of them. And even to me, though, I can tell you that the MX-5 feels quite a bit tighter as far as just where everything's located.
Everything's so tight.
Yeah, everything is really tight in that car, and you're definitely more stretched out a bit in the FRS. But yeah, small cars.
Well, let's find out which one is more balanced when you take it around the racetrack. And this is a true test of these cars because these cars are meant to be the true gentleman racer cars, right? Mm-hmm. You drive into work and you take them racing on the weekend. Here's a little kink in this episode. You don't know what the time is, so let's put you in the FRS on the track and see how well you went. Under the hood of the FRS is also a 2-liter, but this time it's a boxer engine, which means that it's horizontally opposed, which means it sits lower in the chassis, giving you a lower center of gravity. This is a 2-liter that puts out 200 horsepower and 151 pound-foot of torque. It's also paired to a 6-speed manual transmission, powers the rear wheels, but this car weighs 400 pounds more than the Miata.
Really fun through there, just kind of slides along. Not a lot of grip from these tires.
The Scion has some Michelin Primacy tires. Where did they get these names? Now these are also, of course, kind of all-season performance tires, and both of these cars are not overtired. And what I mean by that is there's not a lot of width or a lot of tire on these cars. They're not really tired, they just don't have a lot of tire.
But the car itself is very well balanced, very well behaved, if a little gutless engine-wise. And you just really feel that here at altitude, relative to, of course, maybe more of a sea level situation where the car might be a little bit closer.
All right, Paul. Now, Toyota says that this car represents the perfect balance that a sports car should have. So just the right amount of power, just the right amount of grip, right? It's the return of the classic two-door sports car. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I do.
Yeah?
I do. I think it works pretty well. We've been driving some pretty high-powered cars, and you've got to really think more of a sort of energy conservation in a car like this, where you have to really, really deal with your momentum.
Yeah.
So yeah, I felt better, and it is a different type of car to drive because it just isn't an overpowering car.
All right, so when you got down with the lap, did you have a good sense of how fast it was?
I didn't have a good sense. I mean, I thought I was kind of probably sitting in the 110, right around a 110 range, driving around. I was incredibly impressed with how the car performed around the track. It just, again, it's a 200 horsepower car at 5,000 plus feet.
All right, well, let's just cut to the chase and take you to the track again for the MX5. Under the hood of the Miata is a normally aspirated 2-liter 4-cylinder that puts out 155 horsepower and 148 pound-foot of torque. It is paired to a 6-speed manual transmission that powers, the rear wheels.
Whee! Having fun in the Miata. These cars I can take flat out across the hill. Some of the other cars you can't. This car's a lot softer than the FRS. It still steers and does all that stuff well, but it also tends to light the inside tire up more. It doesn't have much of a limited slip going on back there.
On the Miata, we've got these Bridgestone Potenzas. They're an all-season performance tire, which means they should be okay on the track. Now, there is a club version of this car. Unfortunately, we couldn't get our hands on one, so we're using this one because, well, we test what we can get our hands on.
Way softer than the FRS. And a more peaky engine. You've got to keep the engine up on boil. But really fun to drive.
All right, Paul. So which car is faster?
Again, subjectively,
Yeah.
it's really tough to feel. This one feels quicker to me.
Yep.
Around the track. But it's a lot more work because it moves around a lot more and it takes a bit more commitment, which makes it fun. But the FRS is kind of that very planted, stable, a lot less roll, a lot less pitch. But it also is, kind of a more torquey motor, so you don't have to work as hard with the engine. So the FRS kind of gets its lap time pretty easily.
Yeah.
And this one, you've got to really work to get lap time out of it.
All right, so I'm going to ask you, which one's faster again?
I'm still going to stick with this.
All right, what's the time on this one? What do you think?
I'm going to say it's right around maybe a low 109.
Okay, and how about the FRS?
I'm going to say that's right around like a 110 or so.
All right, so the difference you got right. So you got to give yourself a little bit more credit, Paul. Here's this time.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Oh, okay. All right. So there you go. About a second difference.
About a second delta. Yeah. So this is the second faster, but remarkably similar.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting.
And you nailed it, dude.
They go about it in such different ways. I did not expect that.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that at all.
All right. Well, we still have to figure out whether it's hot or not back in the studio.
Yeah.
Interestingly, they kind of tackle the track in two different ways. Kind of talk me through that.
Completely different, and so the FRS is sort of this heavy car, but it's very planted. Maybe that boxer engine with that low center of gravity is helping because it does feel like it has very low roll centers and it has a limited slip differential. So it was very flat, very poised around the track and quite easy to drive, but really well balanced. So it was fun. Just again, not a lot of motor. Then you get into the MX5. And the MX5 is softer because this isn't the Club Sport edition, so it had more roll, didn't have a limited slip differential, so it's spinning the inside tire. So they end up, within 1.1 seconds of each other, but getting there in just entirely different ways.
So of course the elephant in the room is that one's a convertible, and this one isn't. And I just said that both cars are tight, but when I take the top off that car, it's a completely different vehicle. So all of a sudden it works for me. A car that becomes roomy because you've got the beautiful sky overhead and you don't feel so constrained and you don't feel like you're so bunched in. So as you can plainly see, I don't fit in this car. My head hits the convertible top, but there is a magic thing you can do with this vehicle, and that is simply with one hand, check this out, fold the top down, and all of a sudden the car that is way too small becomes just about perfect. And the other great thing about this car is that it's iconic, right? When you get behind the wheel of, let's say, the FRS, people may not know what that car is, but people know what this is. I spent a week behind the wheel and everybody was coming up to me like at the bagel shop saying, hey, is that the new Miata? And that makes you feel good. It makes you feel good to know that you're in a car that people like and that is, well, let's face it, happy-go-lucky. And when you're in a happy-go-lucky car, well, it makes you feel happy-go-lucky like I feel right now. Yeah, so the rub from a racetrack point of view is when you chop the top off a car, you also take away structural rigidity. So,
Yes.
you know, a car can flex in many different ways, but one of the ways that it can flex is like this.
Yep.
And when there's a roof, it won't do that. So it's just a much stiffer chassis to basically bolt your suspension onto. It just makes it a much more potent weapon when it's on the racetrack. Could you tell the difference between the two?
You know, you can't tell a lot. I mean, a very different feel from the car already, but it didn't have to really do. It's more the stiffness of the suspension than the stiffness of the chassis. And to kind of build on your point, when a car is designed to be a convertible from the outset, as the MX-5 is, usually they don't suffer much. It's when they take an existing car and hack the top off that you end up with a lot of torsional rigidity issues.
All right, it's that time of the show.
Yeah.
Let's start with the Scion. Is it, in your professional opinion, hot or not?
I think the Scion's hot.
All right, I'm going to say it is definitely not.
Yeah.
151 pound-foot of torque is just not enough. It needs a turbocharger, a supercharger, or something that just puts a little bit more torque, because driving it is very fun on the track, but when you line up at a stoplight,
yes,
and like the guy in the
minivan outdrags you,
or the pilot.
Yes, exactly.
It's just embarrassing.
It will happen in this car for sure, and definitely I gave it a hot rating because once you're going on the track, you can keep the RPMs up and you can just marvel in that really well balanced, well nailed down chassis.
Paul, all right, how about the Miata MX-5? Is it hot or not?
It's hotter still, absolutely hot to me.
And I'm going to give it a hot as well, but only with the top down.
It works either way. I like it a lot better with the top down too, but such a fun car, and I think it strikes that right balance, and Mazda's just kind of nailing it these days with getting the whole green sort of side of things, where their cars with the Skyactiv were very efficient, but they also know to make them light, and that means they're fun to drive still. This hope.
Yeah, what actually blows my mind is that this car, I was getting 36 mpg driving around town.
Having a blast.
Having a blast.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
not too
cool.
long ago, that would have been a Prius.
Yes, that's really cool.
Yeah, and for a sports car that will do 0 to 60 in 7 seconds, that will lap all day long, and that will take its top down and put a huge smile on your face. That is hot. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. This has been another episode of TFL's Leaderboard, Hot or Not. And as always, come back next time when Paul and I will take another car around the track, and I'll spend a week behind the wheel, and we'll decide whether it's hot or not.
Cool.
Ciao. This is the fastest 3 Series BMW you can buy without an M badge. Now, once upon a time, a 340 would have meant that it had a 4-liter. Not today. Oh no, it's got a 3-liter that puts out 320 horsepower and 330 pound-foot of torque. Now, this is paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission, and of course it has paddle shifters, which Paul will love. It also has BMW's twin power turbo. What does that mean? It just means it's a single turbo that's a twin scroll turbo. And it scrolls up very fast indeed.